Hello, my presentation is about learning, development, and pedagogy. My presentation compares two case studies of early childhood based on the theories of cognitive development by Piaget and Vygotsky. It discusses the concept of volume as perceived by Lyon and the presence of private speech by Zahra when solving the problem. The contribution of educators in facilitating the learning of every child is discussed, showing why growth is influenced by the surroundings, interaction, and the facilitation process. Now, case study analysis. The behavior of Lyme can be used to exemplify the pre-operational stage of development described by Piaget, which involves children between the ages of 2 and 7 years, who tend to exhibit centration, which involves attention to a single aspect of a situation. This cognitive constraint is seen where Lyme assumes that taller containers have more volume in the first part of their interaction. His natural ability to correct and reflect upon his own actions agrees the emphasis of Piaget on active learning and the relevance of physical manipulation to the development of rational thinking. Now talk about Vygotskian analysis. Based on the theory of Vygotsky, the cognitive development of Lyme fits into what is known as the zone of proximal development, the field between what a child can do on their own and what they can learn with assistance. Lyme uses exploratory and peer play to conduct self-learner activities, which are important aspects. As Vygotsky noted, yet the direct adult scaffolding is minimal. Internalization can be seen in his individual mode of reasoning and constant experimenting, without which concepts were beyond reach. Such ways demonstrate the significance of socially mediated and contextualized learning environments that trigger higher order thinking mediated by language and action. Now talk about educator's role. The role of the educator in the case of Lyme shows a building and inquiry approach. Instead of giving direct teaching, the educator will give observational guidance that will be documented regarding cognitive experimentation of Lyme. This correlates with the Tvarkey principles that focus on child control of the learning and the environment as a characteristic of an active teacher, helping an educator create rich, open-ended experiences. This practice transforms the educator into a facilitator of discovery, given an autonomous exploration. The pedagogy encourages independent cognitive growth and hence Lyme can construct knowledge via trial, reflection and socialization in a well orchestrated learning environment. Now come case study analysis, Zahra Pygatian analysis. The behaviors of Zahra indicate development into another phase of Pygate, from the pre-operational stage to the concrete operational stage. Her cognitive abilities in solving puzzles and playing with the STEM prime promise underlying expertise in categorization, conservation, and cause and effect thought processes. Her reversibility comes out in the restoration of lost puzzle pieces, and she goes back to the correct position. The sense of an ongoing symbolic role is implied by her secret speech and imaginative narratives. These mental milestones agree with the opinion of Piaget that manual practical experience and practice help to establish logical frameworks at early school stages. Now, Vygotsky analysis. This behavior exhibited by Zara supports the theory of Vygotsky, especially the significance of the role of private speech to cognitive self-management. Through this process of solving puzzles and STEM problems, and as she goes about it, her microverbal narration shows that she has some inner scaffolds of ZPD, which allows her to preserve and solve the problem without asking anyone. Her bilingual thought process promotes higher order executive functions like attention, planning, and the flexibility to think outside the box. The interaction with social surroundings, albeit minimal, is also an enhancement of her development by observation and mutual interrogation. The language used by Zahra in self direction is an illustration of social mediation of learning by Vygotsky. Now talk about educator's role. In the case of Zahra, the educator plays a less noticeable but effective role that is based on principles of hierarchy and constructivist learning. Instead of explicit instruction, the educator provides observational guidance and gives Zahra freedom to learn by trial and error and to report her thoughts as she works. This way of approaching school like acknowledges her bilingual status and learning style and leaves room to thrive when it comes to her self regulation. The well planned environment provokes inquiry and observation, making the educator act as a third teacher who guides but doesn't dominate. Now talk about comparative discussion. Both teachers share a lesson in using child-led learning, making observations and noting except to disturb the thinking process. They are well-planned classrooms with open-ended resource materials that lead to self-directed learning in line with the T hierarchy and constructivist approaches. They acknowledge the autonomy of the children and leave learning to an individual pace so as to create agency and confidence. Such an observational practice serves as the basis of authentic assessment and meaningful involvement along with the developmental pattern of every child. Nevertheless, even within these similarities, there are differences in the scaffolding techniques used by the educators. Line is educated by the teacher who does not intervene when her pupil learns by trial and error, as suggested by Piaget. A more emotionally sensitive and culturally responsive approach is taken by Zahra's educator, who validates her bilingual self speech, problem solving, and reflection, which is in line with how Vygotsky focuses on language and cultural relevance in the learning process. Now, conclusion. Therefore, the case studies of Lime and Zahra demonstrate how theories represented by Pygant and Vygotsky offer complementary explanations in regard to early cognitive development. Pygant emphasizes phases of logical thinking based on self discovery, whereas Vygotsky focuses on ways of language, culture, and social circumstances. To support the development, teachers are also essential, using their flexible support and encouraging independence, confidence, and self development based on individual children needs. Now there are references list which I took and I create my all the content. Thank you so much.